Hi and welcome to the Discourse Collective, this time in abortion. It doesn't get more divisive than this. The two sides seem utterly opposed, and when you look at their position, it's not hard to see why. One wants to force a decision on the other, while the other wants the ability to do something that the other groups see as abhorrent. The labels applied: pro-life, pro-choice, pro-murder, anti-life, anti-choice. These are all labels that are designed to wound, to upset, and to divide. How to fix this? With discourse, of course. Many advocate better discourse when it comes to the subject of abortion. Sadly, those two camps can't seem to really talk with any civility, and those in the middle would understandably often just stay out of it. Aspen Baker gives a fantastic TED talk on this phenomenon, which is worth watching. We'll put a link up there. Sometimes the best place to start is something we can all agree on. If we can do that, then we can move forward together, right? Is there such a place within the abortion argument? Yes, there is. It's the fact that we're all anti-abortionists. Nobody sane thinks that a baby moments from being born should be aborted. So we've established a line along which we can all agree. It's now a matter of understanding that for some, that point is further back into the pregnancy than for others. Some people might argue it's 24 or 20 or 18 weeks, and for some it's 12. For others, who we're going to talk about first, this limit is actually at the very moment of conception itself. In the US, especially, the conversation on pro-life is dominated by Christians. In many Christian sects, abortion is seen as against the word of God. In a Pew Research study, which is admittedly a little long in the tooth now, from 2014, it showed that of those against abortion, 94% of the respondents said they had a strong religious belief. Of that 94%, 70% were Christian. Now, while Muslims also hold beliefs about when and how abortions are possible, they tend to only apply that standard to other Muslims rather than non-Muslims as a whole. When pressed, most Christians will say that they feel that God does not want abortions to occur, but they'll often be able to actually say exactly why that is from a religious perspective. The Bible doesn't mention abortions other than to provide instructions on how to actually perform one. Many passages of the Bible make reference to either killing babies or pregnant mothers as a good idea to be positively encouraged. You'll see some of them up the side of the screen here. But let's not forget, even if the Bible specifically mentioned abortion, that's not the point. If your faith leads you to think abortions are wrong, then don't have an abortion. You don't get to control what other people can or can't do because of your own personal faith. The whole Bible argument is anyway a misdirection. The real reason abortion is a right-wing religious rallying point is that they lost the segregation argument in the 1960s and needed a new rallying war cry to unite around. After several searches for issues that they could take the moral high ground on, including pornography and prayer in schools, abortion was found to be the best option. Prior to this period, religious evangelicals had been powerfully silent on the subject of abortion, seeing it really as a Catholic issue. Christians, especially Catholics, will naturally try to pull the conversation of abortion towards either dogma or science because the real reason for their religious objection is actually undefendable. Their real reason they don't like it is the idea that a human soul is transfused into a zygotic cell at the moment of conception. Of course, this argument can't be used in any meaningful way because it doesn't really make very much sense. Now, those who wish to gate access to abortions, arguing from a scientific viewpoint, will normally root the argument around what or when makes a fetus human. This will focus on the development of the organs, the heartbeat, the movement, or brain activity, or perhaps pain response. And because of the way a fetus develops, this naturally means people will have a cut-off point for when they see the abortion crossing the line from acceptable to unacceptable. Now, some maintain that the simple fact that the zygote is genetically unique should be enough to ensure a right to life. For others, that point is actually much later on. It's perhaps in the field of neurobiology of fetal brain development that the argument becomes most tangled. The limited neurons that form at 5 to 6 weeks can't really be called a brain in any serious sense. Even as the more complex higher mammal areas of the neocortex form, They do so without those familiar folds you see on pictures of the brain, or in fact any left or right brain connection at all. This leads most neuroscientists to posit that it's well after week 24 that a brain can be considered working, in that it might actually support conscious thought. There are three main thrusts to moral arguments around abortion. The first is that once life is conceived, it represents a future potential human, and therefore it must be protected. The second is that a fetus is a human, and killing humans is wrong. Thirdly, there's the issue of bodily autonomy. Now, while it's undeniable that even from a conception point, we're talking about a future potential human, but it's hard to establish what rights that should actually grant. With modern scientific advances, every cell in my body is a potential human being. Additionally, having the future potential of personhood does not mean that the actual people living here and now should not be considered. The welfare and wishes of the mother, for example, or the wider family are also morally important. The second point relies on us establishing the point at which a fetus obtains the status of being human, which is fraught with issues, as we've seen above. The bodily autonomy argument sees many who hold the pro-choice position say that a woman should not be asked to provide resources to a fetus, which actually can be medically considered a parasite, against her will. They often point to the fact that organs and blood donations are voluntary. We're never forced to help other humans against our will, and so, they say, it should be the same with a fetus. As we'll see, all of those three moral arguments do have a bearing on the final position that most people hold on this subject. Now, one of the big problems, for me at least, is the inconsistencies in how those who say they are pro-life act in the rest of their lives. If someone is pro-life, I would expect them to want to cherish all life at all stages in whatever way they could. Education, healthcare, emotional well-being and social support. These are the things I'd expect those who say they are pro-life to actually champion. Alongside this, I'd imagine they'd support free sexual healthcare services and sexual support and education services for young people. Sadly, this is actually almost the exact opposite of what we see in real life. Once babies are born, suddenly their right to life seems to be so much less important. Many pro-life advocates are almost totally silent on issues of deaths from abuse, drugs or capital punishment, actively trying to help young people by educating them on sexual health, making good healthcare available, or making sure they're paid enough to just live a good life seems a very distant goal for many of them. In short, I'd feel very less suspect about the pro-life position if they acted like life actually mattered to them. Why are they not protesting against the death penalty or funding research into preventable deaths in developing countries? Now, I'm not saying that all pro-life advocates follow this pattern or that it invalidates all of their arguments, because it doesn't. But it does make me wonder if some are arguing from a position of bad faith, rather than a really true conviction that they care about the life of the unborn child. So where does that leave us? Well, I'd like to start by suggesting we ignore the religious aspect of all of this. Regardless of what the Bible or the Quran or any holy book says about abortion, these are not universally applicable arguments against abortion. They require a belief structure in order to support their case, which many people will find unconvincing at best and nonsensical at worst. This leaves us with a huge question to settle. When does a human life start, and does anyone have the right to stop that process, given that it could produce a human baby? I'd suggest that the argument that something with the potential to be human has the same rights as a born human, and therefore should be protected under law, is not a good argument. Any argument in this direction must also cover frozen embryos and any stem cell research that is used to make embryos in a lab. Given that we can now turn any human cell into a stem cell and then into an embryo, technically means that all cells must be considered potential humans. So I think it's best we put that potentiality argument to one side. This leaves us with the very simple fact that at some point abortion becomes murder. Establishing when exactly that point occurs is a matter that I think is best left to those who understand it, namely biological scientists. All of this leads us to the following conclusion. Allow science to set the maximum extent to which an abortion can be performed. Then allow those directly affected, namely women, to choose if an abortion is the best choice for them at that time. Who else is better equipped to make a terribly hard choice like that than the actual mother? Make no mistake, nobody gets pregnant thinking, great, now I can go ahead and get an abortion at last. Please, let's not make this situation harder and worse by shaming and blaming those who find themselves in this really hard position. Should we not have some compassion and place the welfare of the already living higher than those who have not yet lived or become conscious? Above all, let's please remember that the simple act of talking and understanding others' points of view should be done calmly, civilly, and in good faith. I hope you found this video thought-provoking, interesting, and informative. Please do like and subscribe this video and this channel so that we can keep offering you content as and when it arrives. Until next time, goodbye.